In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can load the code onto your music device so that we're going to be able to access the buttons and the sliders. First thing you're going to want to do is to go to the music devices GitHub page. That's github.com/mangtronics/music devices. And this is the GitHub where we have all of the source code and software libraries for the class. We also have all of the class notes here in the weekly schedule. So to get the source code, we've got two main options. We can download it as a zip file, and we can also open it up into GitHub Desktop. So if I'm here in the root directory of the repository and I click on this code button, you can see here I have these options to download the zip file, or I could open it up with GitHub Desktop. If you're familiar with Git and GitHub Desktop, I would highly recommend that you open it up with GitHub Desktop, so that this way you'll be able to automatically update the files you've downloaded to your computer. But the simple way to do it for today's version is we're going to just download the zip file of everything that's in the repository. So now I'm going to download the zip onto my local machine, and I'm going to open it up. And so now we can see that I actually have a complete copy of everything which is in the repository. So this CircuitPython folder here, I also have this over here on my local machine, and I have all of the code and library files in there. So the next thing we want to do is we actually want to get these files, some of these files, onto our physical CircuitPython board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new Finder window. I'm just going to organize this so that I've got my files on my local machine here on the left, and what I'm going to do is set it up so that this window on the right is going to correspond to the files that are actually on my CircuitPython board. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my CircuitPython board is connected and plugged in. So we'll see it's going to boot up here, and there's going to be some text. Now, if I scroll down here, I can see that this new CircuitPy drive has appeared. So these files here in this virtual USB drive are actually the files that are stored directly onto our CircuitPython board. So now if I drag and drop something from my local machine here onto my CircuitPy drive, those files are actually going to be copied to our board, and that's going to allow us to run them. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I have all of the libraries installed. So the software libraries are code that are written by other people, for example, Adafruit, which are going to provide libraries of functions that allow us, for example, to access the Neo keyboard. So if we look into the lib directory here on my local machine, I can see that there is, for example, this Adafruit Neo key directory, which contains some code. And for us to be able to access the Neo key on our CircuitPython board, we need to install these libraries here onto our CircuitPython board. So if I go over to my CircuitPython board and I open up the lib file, again, when I'm opening up the directory here in the CircuitPy drive, I'm actually accessing the files directly here inside the board. I can see that I've already got a few libraries installed. What I want to do is make sure that all of these libraries here from the class source repository are installed on my CircuitPython board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select all of these on my local drive, and I'm going to drag and drop them into the lib folder on my board. And before I let go here, it's important to make sure that I've got the right folder. I want to make sure, you can see Mac OS is being helpful here and doing some weird auto stuff. I want to make sure that I put these files directly into the lib directory. So I'm going to make sure the lib directory is selected. Sorry for this macOS weirdness. Select here, drop, and I can see I got this message about if I want to replace them. For the lib directory, it's going to be fine to replace them. Basically, we just want to make sure that we've got all of the libraries that we need. So I'm just going to replace them. Again, what I did is I took all of these files and I dropped them into the lib directory, and I'm going to copy those over. It's going to take a little bit of time. It can be a little bit slow to copy the files over, but we only have to copy the libraries over once, which is part of what is great actually about CircuitPython. With Arduino, we would have to compile all the code for the libraries, and then every time we want to upload our sketch, we actually have to copy the library over, whereas with CircuitPython, we only need to do this once, and then the library is going to live actually on the CircuitPython board. So we want to make sure that when we look in this lib directory here on the CircuitPython board that the path, for example, to this Adafruit Neo key is lib Adafruit Neo key. We want to make sure that we didn't do something like that we don't have something like lib/lib/Adafruit Neo key, because then our code is not going to be able to find it. Okay, so the copying process has completed. So I now can see that when I look inside my CircuitPython drive and I look in the lib directory, I can see that I have each of these libraries here. And when I look into my local machine at the code that I downloaded, I can see that inside the lib directory there, that basically all of those libraries have been copied over. Okay, next, let's copy over our example. And in this case, let's look at this one here, this demo slider key, which is a demo code for accessing both the slider and the Neo key. So I'm going to drag this from my local machine over to my CircuitPy drive, I should say. And you can see here I now have this code file on my CircuitPy drive. The next thing I need to do is to actually have the CircuitPython board run that code. So to do that, I'm going to fire up Visual Studio Code. And then I'm going to get Visual Studio Code to connect to the CircuitPy drive so that I can edit those files. And the best way to do that is to go here, File, Open Folder. And that is going to allow us to open the entire CircuitPython drive. So I did File, Open Folder, and then I can select my CircuitPy drive here, hit Open. And now you can see here on the left, I have a list of all of the files that are in the CircuitPy drive. Don't get confused by these ones here that have the ._. These are just some kind of operating system files, or maybe they're Python files. I'm not sure exactly, but basically we can ignore all of these files that start with a dot. So the files that start with a dot are normally hidden, but since Visual Studio Code is kind of a programmer interface, it's showing those files to us. Okay, so we've got our demo slider key.py file installed. So let me open that up, and we can see here, this is the code that we want to run. And now what I can do is go into this code.py file. If you recall, the code.py file is the file which is run by the CircuitPython board at startup. So if we want our other code to run, we need to edit this file. So inside here, I'm just going to get rid of some of this other code that I had lying around. And so if imagine we just start with an empty code.py file. Here I could say print hello world, right? Now when I hit save, we can see that our board is going to restart. And there's some very tiny text on there, a little hard to read right. So if we want to access the serial terminal inside Visual Studio Code, we can go to Terminal, new terminal, we can click serial monitor. We can make sure that the correct port is selected. Here you can see this one starts with, or this one has Adafruit in it. And we want to make sure that our baud rate here is 115200. That's how fast the serial port should communicate. And then I can click Start Monitoring. So now if I go back into my code.py file and hit Save, you can see here we get this output here, soft reboot, auto reload is on, simply save files over USB to run them. And you can see here that I'm getting this output of hello world that's coming from my code. If you don't have this serial monitor installed, you can install that by going to View, Extensions, and searching for serial monitor. So you can see here, I have the serial monitor already installed. If it wasn't installed, there would be a button here to install it. Okay, so we've got our code.py running our code.